Okay, you guys are good to start.
So good evening. Thanks so much for joining us today. For those who are joining us, I know we're live streaming, so please feel free to use the function, the chat function, I believe it is, to ask any questions throughout the presentation, and then we'll allocate some time at the end for Q&A as well. So just to start by introducing ourselves. So my name is Leanne Eyre. I work with the Royal Bank in the community as a senior financial planner with investment and retirement planning division of our RBC. So I work with individuals going through many different life stages and life events, helping them set up a plan and providing advice along the way. Also, we have Jay Lydiard here. Jay, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jay Lydiard. I'm the branch manager in Sterling Falls. I've been with RBC for about 15 years or so. And, I'm kind of here to answer any general questions that we may have.
So today we're going to cover off a few different topics. We're going to look at, financial planning, how to plan for success, things to consider along the way, different types of financial accounts and investment accounts, the importance of advice, a little bit about estate planning, and then obviously some questions at the end. So with RBC, we have sort of a unique way of looking at financial planning and giving it advice, and it's called Your Future by Design. So really it starts with a vision of what you want to do. So everybody's situation and circumstances are unique. The way that we look at it is basically different life areas. So we use the following life areas: family, lifestyle, health, mind and spirit, house or home, work, business, and legacy, to sort of identify what your top priorities are. And then we plan around, what's important to you and how your financial plan fits within those priorities. As far as successful investing goals, there's a lot that goes into investing. Sometimes people that we speak to, can find it to be a little intimidating when you're looking at starting off or investing. So we wanted to put together sort of some tips and key considerations. So one would be to set goals. So really setting clear financial goals. Before you start investing, it's really important to define your financial goals, whether you're saving for retirement, buying a home, or funding your child's education. Having clear goals will help you determine how much you need to save and how to allocate these investments. Your time horizon. So considering your time frame. So your investment time frame will really depend on your financial goals, when you may need access to the money. If you have a longer time horizon, you may be able to take on more risk within your investments for potential returns. So looking at your time horizon and your goals, you may have short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. So an example of a short-term goal would be, you want to buy a car within a year. A medium-term goal might be saving for a house in 3 to 5 years. Long-term goal might be retirement or funding a child's education 10, 15, 20 years out. So it's really important to identify those goals individually and get advice that pertains to each unique goal. So considering your risk tolerance and understanding risk, your risk tolerance is the ability to endure fluctuations in the value of your investments. So it's important to align your investment strategy with your risk tolerance to ensure that you stay invested for the long term, and to ensure that it's suitable for each goal. I always say to be cautious of high-risk investments. While high-risk investments may offer the potential for high returns, they also come with greater chance of loss. To be cautious of any investment opportunities that sort of seem too good to be true, and just carefully research and get investment advice before committing to anything long-term. Diversify. So diversification is key to managing risk within your investments. By spreading your investments across different asset classes, industries, and geographic areas, you can really reduce the impact of market volatility on your portfolio. 5 is monitor your investments, so regularly reviewing and rebalancing your portfolio. So as your financial goals and market conditions change, it's important to regularly review your investment portfolios and make adjustments as needed. Rebalancing your portfolio can help you stay on track with your goals and ensure that your investments are really aligned with your risk tolerance. 6 is probably the most important: seek professional advice. So before making any investment decisions, it's important to consult with a financial planner. If you're unsure about how to invest for the future or need help developing an investment strategy, consider seeking advice from a professional that can help you assess your financial goals, your risk tolerance, and investment options to create a customized investment plan. Investing for the future really requires discipline, patience, and a long-term perspective. By setting clear goals, starting early, diversifying, and seeking professional advice, you can build a strong, solid investment portfolio that will help you achieve your goals over the long term. So having a plan. So one of the unique platforms that we use that's pretty interactive at RBC is called My Advisor. So basically, My Advisor allows you to track your goals. Whether, in this example, we've got a vacation trip that's going to be short-term retirement. And then you can add other goals like saving for a house or child's education, that sort of thing. So creating a plan and starting early allows you to plan for the future. So, as the saying goes, someone's sitting in a shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. So these choices and these action items that you do today to create a plan will really benefit you over the long term. It's important to keep in mind also that investment plan is not stagnant. It can be modified at any time. So there are many different levers that can be adjusted over time to better meet your goals. So as life happens, we always revisit things and we always make adjustments accordingly. So this is a bit of a busy slide, but basically what this demonstrates when we look at the chart here, the point of this is to say how important diversification is and diversifying your portfolio. So when we look at each year over year over the last 10 years, it's never any single asset class. So whether it's the US market or the Canadian market or stocks or bonds, there's never one single asset class that's the top performer every single year. So some years Canada's going to have a really great year in the market. Some years the United States will. Some years banks will do really well. Some years technology will be the driving force behind performance in the market. So the more that you can diversify your portfolio, the more you can really spread out that risk and make sure that you're taking advantage of all growth opportunities, but also reducing volatility along the way. So again, having a plan in place and making sure that you have somebody and something to guide you along the way is going to help you during times of volatility. So even seasoned investors can become overly focused on short-term movements. So this can really lead to hasty decisions. For example, investing when markets have already risen or selling after the markets have fallen. So to maintain perspective and focus on the long term is going to really ensure that you have success and that you achieve your goals. So when we look at inflation and the impacts of inflation, we really wanted to talk about this, especially how important inflation has played a part over the last few years. So we've got a couple of examples here to show us really the impact that it's had. So when we look at the last 10 years, basically we're saying a basket of goods and services. So what would have cost us $100,000 20 years ago, today would cost us about $150,000. So that's about a 54% change in the average annual rate of inflation decline in the value of money really at the end of the day is about 2%, just over 2%. So this is over the average of the last 20 years. If we go to the next slide, we can see that more important now than ever, we want to protect our money from inflation. So we grew over the last 20 years from 100,000 to about 154. Over the last 4 years alone, we've grown almost 20% change. So what would have cost $100,000 in 2020 is now costing us close to $120,000. So, you know, the average obviously rate of inflation is 4.3%, so over double. So basically what we're saying is, you know, the purchasing power that we have is a lot less than it was before. Inflation has been very aggressive. Hopefully we're going to get that more in line, but what we want to make sure is that, you know, $100,000, if you're putting that in a bank account for example, in 5 years from now, you still have $100,000. That $100,000 is going to get you a lot less than it did 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. So it's important to have strategies in place to protect your purchasing power. So when we look at the importance of planning around this in financial planning, compare this to market volatility. This is a bit of a what if scenario, and you know, when we look at a fully funded goal of 103% funded goal, meaning, we've got all the data in place saying, working with the client saying, okay, whatever your retirement goal is, you're funded 103%. If inflation increased from 2.1 to 3%, so just under 1% increase, it would drop you down to about 80% of your goal. Whereas alternatively, if you look at, market volatility is always going to happen when we see ups and downs in the market. If we saw about a 30% drop in the markets during the first years of retirement, it would only impact the long-term goal by 5%. So it really shows you the impact that it has. So to speak to that, the power of compounding. So we want to make sure, again, that we're growing, money over time. So in these scenarios here, what we're doing is we're just demonstrating an illustration of an example of $100,000 that was invested in a balanced, diversified investment over time. So if we look at the last 15 years, if we would have put this money in 15 years ago, we've got an average rate of return of just under 6.5%. Today, it would be worth about $257,000. So just letting it sit there. Obviously, we've had good years and bad years in the market over the last 15 years. But when you translate that into funding, cash flow for yourself, if we were to take that $257,000, so the $100,000 with the growth, and use that to create $1,000 a month of cash flow for yourself for 15 years, you could see that over the 15-year period, you would have received about $166,000 of cash flow. So every single month you're getting that $1,000. Today, your original $257,000 would actually be worth $375,000. So really, it shows the power of compounding and making sure that you've got longevity in that cash flow. Most people's retirement are 30 plus years, so we've got that same scenario of $257,000. We've got still $1,000 a month. If we look at what that means over about a 35-year period, the amount that you would have received over that same period is about $445,000. And you'd still be sitting with over $800,000 today. So again, allowing your money to be invested long-term and compounding is really going to pay off, making sure that you're not running out of money. Sitting kind of in a bank account, not really seeing long-term growth. With any financial plan, we always want to include estate planning. So lots of different components to estate planning. The main key elements that we like to talk about are creating a will, account ownership, beneficiaries, powers of attorney, insurance, and trust. So with a will, obviously this document outlines who you want to act on your behalf. So an executor gives them the power to manage your affairs for the good of your beneficiaries. If you have minor children, it includes your wishes for perhaps their guardianship. Account ownership, any property registered, joint tenants or joint right of survivorship would not be included as your estate. They would simply be re-registered to the survivor that's already on the account. Naming beneficiaries on registered accounts. So any registered accounts, meaning an RSP, a TFSA, a RIF, a locked-in RSP, LIF, that sort of thing. Anything that's a registered account, you can actually name a beneficiary. So insurance policies are included in this as well. So even the ones at work, this would allow it to bypass your estate and it would be paid right out to the beneficiaries if something were to happen to you, which can reduce probate fees and in some cases taxes that your estate pays. A power of attorney. So a power of attorney and will, I would say, are the two most important documents. A good estate plan, provides for your beneficiaries, not just if you pass away, but also if you cannot act on your own behalf for health or for other reasons. A power of attorney is someone you authorize to act on your behalf. They can do almost anything that you can do personally. Some exceptions to this is naming beneficiaries on accounts or writing a will. Insurance always plays, a factor, and really it's about managing risk. So it's about the what ifs. So reviewing life insurance and disability, critical illness insurance coverage is really a good part of your estate planning and should be done from time to time. Trust. So there may be situations where you don't want to make an outright distribution of your estate, prefer to do it gradually or provide for one or more beneficiaries as long as you live. There also may be blended families, there might be minors involved. So trust can be an effective strategy for this. And again, there are a lot of different types of trust. So this would be something that you would obviously speak to your legal representative about when you're creating your will, and they can help you achieve exactly what you're looking for. One of the more popular strategies is making, we see all the time, is making accounts joint. So, the same conversation I have basically with anybody that comes in and says, I want to make my account joint with someone that isn't a spouse. It may make sense at the time, but I always like to explain what it all is involved and the advantages and the disadvantages as well, because a lot of people don't know this. So, anytime you're making an account joint, you may be doing it for estate planning purposes. You may say, I want to make this account joint to waive probate or to avoid it being part of my estate. Making your account joint allows whoever you're making that account joint to have full access to those funds, but it also becomes their asset as well. So if there's something happens to, let's say you made, for an example, I've seen where someone's made their child joint on their bank accounts or on their investments, and then that child goes through a marriage breakdown. So then that asset is actually included, it could be considered and included as the child's assets, which then, when they're looking at a division of assets through the marriage, they may want to, their ex-spouse may want to look at that and try to include it. So really know that what's involved. It's also subject to creditors. And, if there was ever a legal event that happened or a legal challenge with that child in this scenario, or whoever else it was, those could be included. Those could be considered that second person that you made count your investments joint as their asset as well. So really, really have a good understanding of, what that entails before you make that decision. So we want to take a little bit of time to talk about different types of registered accounts. So we've got an RSP, RIF, TFSAs, RESPs, and RDSPs. So, starting with an RSP, the key reason for contributing to an RSP is really to provide you with another source of income at retirement, but it also has tax benefits. So anytime you contribute to your RSP during your working years, you receive a tax benefit since the contributions are tax deductible. The second and equally important benefit of the RSP is that it has tax-free compounding of growth. So meaning as it's growing within the RSP, you don't have to pay tax on that growth. If you make regular contributions throughout the year, all of the earnings and contributions generate additional income, and it helps your savings to grow faster. If you don't use your RSP 1 year, you can always carry forward the RSP room as well. Tax-free savings accounts. So tax-free savings accounts were introduced a number of years ago. I would sort of say, I wish they would have named it something else, because like an RSP, it's sort of an umbrella. So you can use it as a savings account. So basically, you can save just like you would do in your savings account, but you could also use it for investment purposes. And really the benefit to that is that you're going to see tax-free growth. So it doesn't give you a deduction against your income when you contribute to a tax-free savings account, but anything that you invest within your tax-free, the growth over time can be pulled out at any time without any tax event or any tax consequences to you. So the contribution room really depends on your age. So starting at age 18, when you turn 18, you start to grow room in your tax-free savings account. Your annual limit increases every year. As of 2024, if you were eligible for a tax-free savings account from the time it was introduced, your total room would be $95,000 this year. So that's just your contributions, doesn't include the growth. So the other thing is withdrawals don't impact government benefits. So you can treat it as a savings account. You can use it as according to your risk tolerance. So if you're looking for your tax-free contribution room, you can find it on your CRA. You can also often find it on your tax documents the government sends back to you after you file your taxes. So other accounts, first-time savings accounts. So first-time savings account is sort of a hybrid between an RSP and a TFSA. So what that's going to allow you to do is save towards a home. You can put $8,000 annually. It will reduce your taxable income, but when you take it out, it's tax-free and you don't have to pay it back. So the total amount over time would be $40,000 that you can contribute to that. RESP, so Registered Education Savings Plan. Registered Education Savings Plan are great if you're saving for a child or a family member's education. So the government will match 20% up to $500 a year. So that equates to, if you put $2,500 in, they'll match $500 with the Canada Education Savings Grants. And then depending on what your income is, you may qualify for the Canada Learning Bond as well. Again, you can carry forward some grant amounts. And you can have a family plan. So that means, let's say you have more than one child, you can share, a certain amount of grants and the funds invested between more than one child. Let's say if they don't all end up going to post-secondary school, for example. Another registered plan that I find isn't talked about enough, or there's not enough information out there, would be the Registered Disability Savings Plan, so RDSP. So RDSP, basically, if you qualify for the disability tax credit, you would qualify for the RDSP. So the RDSP allows you to contribute. Again, there's matching grants. So these matching grants are much greater than an RESP. You've got carry forward amounts, you've got lifetime of $70,000 in grants. And again, this goes tax-free within the plan. The idea is that it's going to fund your needs later in life. But just to give you an idea, the government will contribute, you can earn up to about $3,500 in grants every single year from this plan. So if you or someone does qualify for the DTC, the disability tax credit, it's well worth your time to talk to somebody about whether or not an RDSP makes sense for you. So I want to spend a bit of time talking about, the benefits of working or with an advisor and really the value of advice. So, investment returns are important, but just the value of working with a financial planner or a financial advisor, and getting that advice on a regular basis, helping you reach your financial goals, helping you implement strategies and looking at things from more like a tax perspective, long-term investment strategy perspective. You can see here. So on average, working with a financial planner or a financial advisor, an individual would save up to 2.5 almost times than they would just kind of save on their own. So there's really, really a lot of value in working in getting advice, working with a planner. So again, more than just investments, but working with financial planners can offer you more than just investment recommendations. So a range of financial planning services and resources, investment management, retirement, estate planning, tax planning, guidance setting, financial priorities and financial goals, in intergenerational wealth transfer, and then, for the business owners out there building a succession plan as well. So fees matter. So one of the things that we find, the type of conversation we have a lot, and especially in my role, talking to clients that may be invested somewhere else, is there's not a lot of transparency about what you're paying as far as fees go on investments industry-wide. So it's really, really important to have a good understanding of, what fees are, what you're paying and why you're paying them. What you're getting, what's the value from those fees? Are you comfortable with the investments that you're in, and are the recommendations clear? So we wanted to sort of open it up and see if anybody had any questions at this time. I'm not sure, Jay, if you wanted to also take a minute to talk a little bit about our program here.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take a minute to do like give you a break from talking at least. You can open yourself there. So RBC has a partnership with Nipissing First Nations for the On Reserve Mortgage Program. So that's kind of a program where, it's very similar to lending off reserve, but the big difference is that obviously the bank doesn't hold any collateral on the property. And so therefore Nipissing First Nations can help facilitate to do those loans. And again, they're very similar to mortgage off reserve. Some of the key differences though is the down payment is a little bit different. So there's a minimum down payment requirement of 2.5% of the value of the home, as opposed to off reserve is 5%. Another thing is they are completely open as well. So even though the terms and the interest rates are the same, it is completely open. So as opposed to if you have to pay it off or if you want to make a lump sum payment onto the mortgage, there's no restriction on how those payments are made, and there's no penalty when you make those additional payments. The financial requirements are the same there though, but and what happens is, and it's designed to purchase a house or to do a construction on the house. It's kind of for those two purposes. It doesn't really have the purpose for refinancing or for sometimes additions could be done as well. Those are possibilities too. But it's really designed to help purchase a house or do a construction mortgage. And basically, if you're interested in doing that, what I recommend is reach out to the housing office here in Nipissing First Nations, and they kind of do the preliminary eligibility requirements. And then they refer you to RBC or another advisor, and then we reach out and set up an appointment to go over the finer details there. There's a maximum on the mortgages that we have right now. It's guaranteed up to $300,000. So that's the maximum size of mortgages that we need. Yeah, so I don't know if there is any other questions there, or if there are any comments on the chat. No, doesn't look like there is.
Yeah.
I don't think
I'll just throw in a question, I guess. Would you say, because I imagine with the RHT payout and stuff, like especially for a lot of young adults, kind of like myself, I imagine a lot of people with how expensive housing is and how challenging it can be, there's going to be a lot of people looking to leverage this, you know, to build houses on reserve or, you know, things like that. So would you say for certain people, I know it all depends, it's all dependent, right? But if, you know, for example, you can put more money, you know, people getting money, if that gives you the ability to put more money as a down payment, would you say it's more beneficial to put as much money as you can down initially on your mortgage?
For sure. Like, you mean as an application for a new mortgage or just on the existing one that you have?
Like going into one, or I mean, either way, like, is it better to put more money, as much money as you can down comfortably?
Yeah, for sure. So
How much in-
there's three main pillars when you look at applying for a mortgage or any kind of credit, right? So one of them is your affordability, right? So your total amount that you can afford will impact how much of a mortgage you can have, right? The other part would be your net worth, right? So that's kind of your money that you have available for your down payment and your equity there. And the other part is your credit rating, right? So those two factors. So by having a lump sum available, for sure, that can affect the first two pillars, right? So if you put more down, then you may not need to go to 300,000 on your mortgage. So if you can have a smaller mortgage amount, then that would give you smaller payments, which makes a mortgage more affordable, which for sure definitely helps that, right? The other aspect too, if you have more down, but you still want to go to three, if you don't want to use all the money, say that you would have saved in order to go on the mortgage, it can help having higher equity. For one thing, you can afford to do a better house because you could do above the 300, or even if you have that savings left over, that can strengthen an application because then it shows if there's a change in your financial situation, well, then you have savings that could make those payments for a couple months. Say if you were to change jobs, right? You would have savings to save that. So that strengthens the application. So it definitely would help. It would definitely help the application. And it could help, you know, make it more affordable, or it could help to put more of your own money into it. And therefore, you know, you can maybe go 350,000, because I know housing is starting to go up too, right? Like to do a new purchase is going up.
I think
Yeah, so it
too,
definitely helps.
sorry.
Yes, no, go ahead. No, I was finished.
I was just gonna say, I think too, and like you said, it really does depend. I think, you know, being a homeowner comes with a lot of responsibility. You want to make sure that you've got a nice healthy down payment, but you also want to make sure you have some savings to fall back on, you have an emergency fund. And depending on what your financial situation looks like, you know, could some of these funds be used to fund your retirement as well? So there's kind of an old saying where we say, you can't eat your house. And I know it sounds silly, but what I mean is you want to put all your eggs in one basket, and you want to pay. I mean, the ultimate goal is to pay off your home, but at the same time, you want to have a healthy balance, knowing if life happens, you sort of have a back door, right? So any such scenario, someone gets sick, someone's income is interrupted for whatever reason, you have the means to continue to be able to support yourself. So really you want to look at the full picture.
Yeah.
But certainly, you know, a healthy down payment is important, especially as rates are still, you know, we've seen one interest rate decrease last week, and we expect to continue with more, but we're not in a 1.75% interest rate environment anymore too, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider as well is that like if you want to build a house on reserve, the interest rate is slightly different than the market. Right, so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It speaks to, you know, the point of everybody's situation is different, right? That's why it's really important to get the advice and look at all, you know, all the areas and considerations, and have a customized plan in place, really.
I do have a question. Does RBC have any banks on reserve anywhere?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I think a key point that you mentioned here is those that live on reserve and are considering investments.
Yes.
Should invest with a bank that is on reserve. That my understanding that investment income would be tax free at that point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And that TFSA is, you know, if they're looking into investing maybe for retirement. I know that there's like you know, a certain level that you can't so feed with the TFSA, but maybe an unregistered pension plan maybe would be more the way to go, just because an RSP, like they're taxed at zero currently, and an RSP, I mean, they'll get taxed on that once they start taking their money out of it.
So, glad you brought that up because I remember clients that I've worked with. You don't have to necessarily visit that branch. So, you can easily come to the North Bay to Sturgeon Falls branch or whatever it might be. So myself, for example, I've done this, multiple times where I just connect with that branch as long as it's set up with the home branch being on reserve branch. Yeah, that's an excellent point. So that can be set up there. We have the means to do it that way. And we can still get advice, we can still set up investments, we can still get balance and all those things. But we do something that allows us, you know, to have a home branch and everything kind of established there and the paperwork sort of created there, but we work closely with them, so you don't have to do a road trip basically.
Right.
And then that's a great complement to the tax-free. Tax-free savings account, you can put 95,000 in, as long as you have the full limit, depending on your age.
Yeah.
And you can enjoy the growth on that over time. But if everything doesn't fit in the tax-free savings account, you want to make sure you have the ability to grow that tax-free or use that tax-free, and you can, right?
Yep.
So if you've got, you know, a pension plan, for example, I work with a number of people, in First Nations that have their pension plan, and you move the pension plan in and make sure that as that comes out, it's tax-free as well, right?
I think that's a really good question. We're kind of sort of hitting a block right now with CRA because we have a lot of members that are retiring. And now they're going to start getting taxed on their pension. And so we're kind of hit a roadblock when we fight with CRA until they kind of rectify that. But it's a lot of fighting with them and can take many years before they see it.
I appreciate that. So when clients, and again, at the end of the day, when someone retires and they've got a defined contribution pension plan, they've got some decisions to make, right? So typically they'll have an options package. If I work with individuals to commute those pensions to what we call locked-in RSP with the World Bank, for example, typically when we get the paperwork, we make sure that it includes that little, and it's just a small door, but we just make sure that that includes that this is tax exempt. These are tax exempt funds. So although it's going into an RSP, when it comes out of it, it is not taxed. So that's really important. So we have a way that we will say code it, so to speak, and we can put the proper indicators in our system. So I've done this about 10 times with individuals, so that when it's time to turn on the tap, we get cash flow or income from that plan, it's not getting taxed.
Okay, so would an option be that when they do their options, because the pension with NIPS conversations with Canada Life,
Yes.
is that just like you're saying, like a payout and then put it back into, like, for example, like an RBC pension where it has a little blurb that's saying it?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I've done. That's the exact example. So Canada Life, I just
Wouldn't they be taxed, sorry, on that lump sum?
no.
Okay.
Because it's going from a registered plan to a registered plan, so a registered pension plan to a registered locked-in RSP, which is a vehicle that qualifies to receive those funds. It's staying registered along the way, so it's not a withdrawal.
Okay.
And then when we set up that registered plan with RBC, our back office has the proper information on file to know that those funds are coming out of there and creating that paycheck retirement, it is not taxed.
Okay, yeah, it's really good to know. I'm gonna bring that back to the CFO, because we're kind of getting a roadblock currently with CRA with that.
Yes.
Would that only be for members that live on reserve? What if we have members that have a pension that, you know, it's been tax-free income, but live off reserve? How would that affect them?
So let me get back to you on that. I want to make sure I'm 100% sure on the answer I'm giving you there. Historically, I've always worked with, it's always been tax-free, but let me just.
Yeah, so for me, my cousin is a member, but he
Yes.
lives off reserve, but his income is still tax-free.
Mhm.
And I would like to know, we can also
It
share
should.
that to people that can't live on a reserve or.
I'm gonna say yes, but I want to double check on that, but I'm almost like, I'm pretty certain it is, because really, the criteria would be working on reserve, earning
Yeah.
those funds tax-free, right?
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be required to live on reserve to continue receiving that treatment, and what's the point?
Right.
Yeah.
They know that there's like some stipulations with different things, and there's like little tiny writing on certain things.
Yeah.
Like investments, I've heard that you have to live on reserve in order to have like tax investments. So that my husband would be able to
Right.
participate in that one, but then I'm curious on his pension, if it has to be.
Yeah, I didn't say, no, I didn't say you absolutely qualified, but double triple check on that, just to make sure because it's important.
Yeah.
And I can also send you a bit of a CRA policy and a blurb of the criteria for the investment accounts being opened and what that means and making sure that kind of all losses are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for those questions.
There's a lot of-
Right. So if anyone has questions that they want to send in or anything comes about, please let me know and happy to get back to you with that.
And Leanne has takeaways here that she could leave with you too.
Sure.
So that way you have her contact information, or you can give to other individuals who missed the meeting, and that way they can reach out. Absolutely.
Do you guys have pamphlets on like RSPs and stuff like that? Or you send it over?
I can send it to you.
I feel like we need to start getting this information out, because, you know, the members retire and then we're left scrambling, where I just feel like if this was something that was told to them prior to, if we have some coming up in September, I think it would be a great way for them to try to avoid the CRA.
Absolutely. Mhm. Yeah, I can get you some information. I'll grab your email.
Jade has my email.
Oh, perfect. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Perfect.
So, perfect.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, that was good.